I would say like for my podcast, it's not necessarily about what I find interesting, right? Because like quite often I do an episode with someone, and I was like, that chat was all right. Like I thought it was whatever, and then someone will hit me up and be like, man, that was like such a good chat. I really enjoyed listening to it, right? And it's like one of the things I chatted with Beardy Man actually on the podcast we did was the concept of like offcuts, which is to say fans. They kind of want the offcuts. Back in the day, we would never, like, as artists, put offcuts out. We would always like produce things, and then all that we would put out is like the best of our material, right? Like this really polished sort of releases or whatever.
Yeah, because we think that's what's desirable, and we know what we can do with our abilities in editing and all this.
Yeah, exactly. But it seems like these days people really want all the offcuts. Like people want the random like tidbits of information and the random little conversations you have with people, and they want to hear the works in progress, and they want to hear like all the shit that didn't make the album, and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
So I think
And
like it's not really what I find valuable. It seems to be what the fans find valuable, which is
it
just like whatever. I mean, really, if they're a fan, they kind of want anything.
yeah, that's really funny. It's just like in the end, once you become an artist that's been working so hard for so long, well, we'll say hard, like you've been having fun, I'm sure. And once you've been doing it for so long and just been around in the game, I was excited to have this interview, and I'm trying to tell some people, and I'm trying to explain why it is a great opportunity, and like why I thought about why I even would be excited for it. And it's just because you've been around for a while, and for me to explain that to people who haven't or have less of an electronic music interest and things of that nature, it lost, might have lost my train of thought there, but the this is exactly the offcuts people want. That's what I'm talking about. But
Happens to me always in my podcast. I'm always like, oh, I had a question, but I forgot it. Whatever.
got to keep flowing with it. So, when did you start your podcast?
Started it in about July or August or September, or like somewhere around that area of time in 2019.
True. Yeah. Wow. You've been doing tons of episodes. I'm really stoked on like your lineup. If it was a festival lineup, that'd be remarkable. All those electronic
Yeah.
music artists.
Yeah, I mean, I've just really been asking friends. At this stage, I'm still like working through my friends list before reaching out to too many other people. I mean, there's some people in there I'd never chatted to before. Like I'd never chatted to, like Frank Javsey, for instance. But yeah, COVID, I mean, in some way has been kind of a blessing for the podcast. I mean, I've been able to do so many episodes just remotely with people that I would never get the chance to have met up with and chatted with because, our paths wouldn't have crossed, paths, I guess. So yeah, it's been really cool. I mean, I think so. When did we start? What was the last in-person episode I did? It was episode. Just going through these. The last in-person episode I did was episode 25.
Yeah.
Now we're up to episode almost 75. So we've done almost 50. We've done more episodes now over the internet than I have in person.
It weirdly is easier. People can just be comfortable at their homes, and the people you're talking to understand audio and video, I'm sure, just being sound nerds. And that'll be like something we might talk about too. But what was the original idea with starting your podcast just back in 2019? Why did you want to do that?
Well, I mean, I really like having conversations with people anyway, especially people that I really want to talk to. So I was like, I should just start a podcast, and that would just give me a reason to do that. But also, I don't know. I feel like I'm probably one of the only people who like knows. Well, I'm definitely the only person who knows all the people I know, right? So it's like,
Yep.
I feel like I just have this really kind of interesting, diverse, like base of friends. So I'm like, oh man, I should just like interview them all because they're all super interesting and doing crazy shit.
And so you've just been producing electronic music for a long time, and then making these electronic music artist friends from playing at shows together, or also like reaching out to
Sure.
find out what they're doing and collaborating.
Yeah, it's kind of just a mixture of things. Like sometimes I'll play a show with someone and then like we'll hit it off and become friends that way. Other times it's like I like some of the people are friends of mine, but I've never actually met them in real life. We've just chatted online for a long time.
Yeah,
It's yeah, I mean, however you make friends in the normal world is
I got a couple of those.
yeah.
There's online friends that I actually kind of really hope I meet one day, and I hope we get along all the same. Guess the interests are super similar with those artists, and they would go through a lot of the same things you do, and it would be like talking to someone most relatable to yourself. A lot of people might look up to artists talking to artists, or I don't know, feel intimidated about talking to artists, or even be able to get the time, because when you're on stage or playing together with them, or just busy making the music, collaborating, a lot of people don't get to talk to you, but a lot of people hear the podcasts and music, and that's what I'm saying. Like for myself too, but
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another thing, right? Like, I had a friend of mine the other day tell me that I have this friend. He's like really, really smart. He works at Apple as a security engineer, and he's just like incredibly intelligent. And I was like kind of talking to him, being like, "Oh man, like I'm not an intelligent person. Like you're an intelligent person." And, like I can't remember the conversation we were having, but I basically was like I'm not a smart person. Like you are an actual smart person. Like I'm not even comparable in like a lot of those ways, because he's just one of those people who like retains a lot of information. He reads a lot, and like a lot of what he reads he retains, and he's just a very knowledgeable guy. But he was like, no man, like I think you're really smart in like a different way than I am, because he would like never reach out to peers in the industry that he's in and be like, hey man, want to just like chat and like hang out and like all that kind of stuff. And I just don't have a problem with that. Like I don't have a problem hitting up Dead Mouse and being like, hey, you want to come on the podcast? Like it's not something that I think a lot of people,
you gotta try. And
some people like just have social anxiety with that shit. And I think that's another reason why my podcast is working, because I just don't have a problem hitting up people usually.
well, my thought right away is your podcast is based around communicating with amazing artists. From my eyes, these are all people I'd love listening to, and would love to talk to, and you would just gain so much information, and it feels amazing talking to those people and realizing that they're just humans in the end.
Mm-hmm.
I find I would talk to you about music. Like it would be great to get on your show in the future. That would make me feel like I am at a level of high tech quality producing, because if anyone listens to your stuff, which you've just been nerding out for years, they understand that you're at the level of a professional communication in audio, and it's amazing to be there. And potentially, I've listened to 3 to 5 of your podcasts, and they're mainly long-winded conversations, and you don't get that geeky. But
For sure. But I mean, like, I don't only get people on who are like just because of their production skill, right? For instance, I had Mimi Page on, and like, I don't. It's not that I don't think she's a good producer, but that was not the reason why I had her on the podcast. I had her on because she was like the leading voice against the whole Bass Nectar being a child groomer situation. And like, Brian Taylor, he's not a music producer. He's like a film maker. Or episode 40 is with Bo Young. He's not a producer at all. He's like a friend of mine from Australia that I've just known for a long time.
absolutely.
Episode 42, Donald Guy, he's like a programmer. He's like not a producer. So I mean, I just like getting people on who I think would be interesting to talk to.
Yeah.
Not necessarily people who are just good producers or whatever.
I don't know what it is, why we want to listen. I think in the end, I'm hooked because the electronic music that I like to listen to, similar interests, that would give me the reason why, like, you're just having genuine conversations, and I could just have genuine conversations myself, and I like to do that with my own podcast. This goes with a question that people ask, like, is there a theme to the podcasts that we do, or like, is there rules? And in the end, so what is your podcast style?
I would just say my podcast style is like whatever Joe Rogan's is, I guess, like just free form, long-winded conversations.
Yeah, man.
I mean, the only other style of podcast is sort of like really produced, right?
Yep.
What other styles are there?
Well, potentially ASMR. Is that how you say that?
No,
Is that a podcast?
I don't think that's a podcast. That's just when somebody like compresses audio a lot, right? So the like they whisper and shit, and it like gives people goosebumps.
Yeah. Well, you could make a whole. You could technically make a podcast out of that, or maybe chuck that on Mixcloud and make hour-long mixes of that. But I think it'd be classified as a podcast.
Podcasts would be the weirdest shit.
That is probably pretty popular somewhere. It just
Yeah.
depends what you're into. For some reason, like me and what you think of Joe and probably you, long-winded conversations seem satisfying, and there's actually whatever just comes out in a conversation, people get to learn genuine information from it. There's so much to learn when I'm listening to Joe Rogan, or I'm glad you're making long-winded conversation podcasts too, because just listening to most recently the podcast with Vector, I just know where he's from and what he's up to, which
Yeah.
I'd have to talk to him personally to ever get that info, or
Right.
to realize he's a normal human behind those sweet synthesized beats.
Yeah, to go back to what you were saying about like why is it that people like this so much? I think it's in some way, and this is kind of fucked. I think it's like because nobody's having these real conversations these days. Like usually when you're having a conversation with somebody else at like a dinner or something, like both people are like on their phones and like eating dinner, right? Like
That's hard.
it's just the world we live in now.
That hurts.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just that's. I mean, most dinners I have with my girlfriend, it's like we're both just sitting there on our phone and eating dinner. Like it's that's just how life is now. So I think that's because life is that way. But people like you and I or whoever is on a podcast are taking time out of their day to be like, no, I'm gonna physically I'm gonna build in 40 minutes to just like connect with a human and talk to them. I think that's kind of like awe-inspiring for some people. They're like, "Whoa, what's going on over there? A fucking conversation, crazy."
Hey, they're just chilling, talking, and I heard they were talking about his girlfriend being at the dinner table with his phone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That I get in that.
yeah. So it's like they're kind of like in awe of this thing happening that they don't get to see very often anymore because of phones. Which is like a fucked up way to look at it, but I think that's like partially why.
Cool observation. My buddy in Prague right now, he's American. He can't go to sleep without listening to a podcast. So that's something. I'm not sure if that's new. Of course, podcasts haven't been around forever, but these days he cannot go to sleep without podcasts, and they play all night. And he just has like a usually Joe Rogan from YouTube, and then just having that going on repeat. It just keeps doing the up next. That's a bit wild, not being able to sleep like that, needing
Yeah, it's
that.
like someone to tell him a story before bed. It's the
Just
classic shit.
it feels like maybe your parents are talking in the other room, and you are safe. Maybe there's people in the room, or they're in the other room. It feels like because it's kind of faint in the corner on the computer, and you can
Yeah,
sleep peacefully.
I chatted to Subtronics about this, and I said I noticed that in all of his Instagram stories and stuff like that, he always has like a TV next to him in the studio that's just like playing some TV show. And I'm like, are you always like just watching TV whilst producing? And he's like, yeah, man, I just like always have to have something on just to like fill that extra bit of like mental space that's up there that's not getting used while producing, like just so he never feels like he's alone kind of. It just always feels like someone's there talking.
Yeah,
And I mean, like sometimes when I'm sitting in my house, it feels a bit empty and bare without like, somebody else here, like my girlfriend, for instance, stays here only half the time. And like, sometimes it feels a bit empty and bare. So sometimes, I'll just put my AirPods in and just like walk around the house listening to a podcast or whatever.
yeah.
Or, sometimes I will put on the TV in the other room for that reason. So I understand that. And I also really like to go to sleep watching shit on YouTube, like generally, podcasts or have a movie on or something like that, I'm pretty bad at like going and just getting in bed and being like, all right, I'm alone now with my eyes closed. Like I find it much easier to like lay in bed and be like, oh, I'm with Joe Rogan, like
Yeah, that's my mother is listening or watching TV all the time, and I bet you go through phases of standing in the household or doing whatever you're up to and noticing like today I am gonna not listen to anything. I'm just gonna eat my dinner today because I always watch something when I eat dinner, or I always have a podcast going, or I always have. Personally, that's how I like to roll, changing things up, noticing patterns that I have and trying to change them always.
I've done that a bit. Like for instance, the other day I went and took a shit without my phone. That was
Attaboy.
Yeah, that was a new one, which also made me think. Like I ended up just like reading shit on like the side of like the air freshener spray bottle and stuff like that because I was like, I still need to occupy my brain somehow. I can't just sit here looking at the wall.
So much brain power. So smart.
Yeah, well, not really. It's like I just get anxiety when I like for instance, meditating. I guess is that right? Is trying to like just sit there and do nothing.
Yep.
So yeah, I did that, and then that led me to the thought of like, man, like I always shit with my phone, and I'm assuming like most people do, right? Which means like everyone's phones probably have poo particles on them.
Yeah. Hey, can you take my picture? I,
Yeah,
I've never been to the Eiffel Tower before. This is amazing. Can you take my picture?
that's exactly how that works.
Well, yeah, I'm glad this conversation is rolling off the top, and we seem to be just both chatters. With the limited time, I was thinking actually to burn through a few questions because I think in the end, the idea is to. I'm gonna rinse out all like the kind of a little bit of technical ideas, like having a de-esser, compressing a little bit, limiting the top end of like the master files of your podcast.
Is
You
your
got any?
podcast primarily about like how to make a podcast, or like
Personally, I'm gonna try to. That's how I got in touch with your manager, and that's how I reached out. I was gonna reach out to a whole bunch of separate podcasters and get their opinions on it. Then we can hear.
this is not actually an episode. This is like actually you just like trying to get podcast information from me.
This is gonna be on the episode.
Uh,
So yeah,
it seems kind of
it's.
meta.
I'm gonna put. It's gonna be me and guests within the same podcast. So then it can be it's not biased. It's not one person's opinion. It's a few different podcasters in different areas and what is important to them, how their flow goes. So
This is like a produced podcast that you're putting together. How many episodes have you done?
I do long-winded conversations usually. I just wanted to do a produced one this one time. Personally, I have 27 episodes.
Cool. And what is it? What are they usually about?
So the first 10. Hey, is your name Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet. I yeah, we haven't. I never knew Mr. Bill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I've asked that a lot actually.
yeah, I remember a girl I was dating in Melbourne when I was living there.
I was going to say, it sounds like you have a slight Australian accent coming through.
Yeah, it's maybe rubbing off listening in
Did you live in Australia?
2 years.
Okay, yeah, that's probably long enough to like catch on to some Australianism.
Love doing an Australian accent too. It's
Yeah.
always been good for me. It's
Nice.
always been Sikh.
Oh yeah, fuck it, sick mate.
Yeah, can't. Sorry. But yeah, the ski town where I'm at, Golden, British Columbia, or where I grew up, Aussies would come over and ski, and they were the most fun. They'd always, stay up all night doing cocaine. My dad was so, like, I really loved him. He treated me with a lot of love, so I didn't want to disobey when he said don't do drugs, so I never did, and I just stayed up all night with these guys drinking beers, but mixing tunes for them. And I did that on the regular every Friday after the bar mixing. Would go over to their place after party till 5 a.m. with these Australians, and I just learned to love. I was just like, why are these people so fucking fun? So I went over to Australia to try to vibe out, and every person who talks with an Australian accent. I'm like, we're having a good time. Even I'm at the grocery store. She's like, yeah, cash or card. I'm like, fuck's sake, sweet chick, cash or card, mate. Mate, not everybody sounds like that, but
Yeah,
uh,
no, I'm a big fan of Australia. I should go back and spend more time there. I haven't like spent a lot of time there in the last fucking years. I haven't spent a lot of time there in years, basically.
yeah,
But I really love America too. Like this place is great. But I feel like one thing I do fear a little bit is that I'm gonna lose like all of my Australianisms and like I'm gonna lose all of my accent and like forget
mm,
who I am. Like forget all the things. Like you said, Australians are fun people. They're pretty chill, and they're like they don't take anything too seriously. They kind of like make fun of life just constantly.
yeah.
And I really like that, and I think it's a good quality. And I don't want to lose like that quality too much, I guess. But
Chat with keep in touch with Coffee Cat, man. His tutorials and the guy, he's Australian. He just knows what's up. Trying to make the best time of it, making jokes, fucking things up, but rolling with it. And
he moved to Melbourne recently as well.
yeah, I think I heard that in your podcast.
Nice.
But yeah, my first 10 episodes, I had a couple girls pillow talking me, being like, you should just record your voice. You're hilarious. Had my dad reaching out, being like, every time we talk, I wish I had it recorded. This is so good. So a bunch of people inspired me, and doing some Wim Hof breathing and running, I just got more motivation to try another new thing. And it was really easy for me I picked up a field mic, a Zoom field mic, in Australia, and then I was in France at this time. And with production skills, I'm like, well, I could very easily record my voice and probably make it sound fine. And then I was like, well, what am I going to talk about? Who am I going to talk to? So I flowed with what I do, and I just went into the top of my iTunes, and that's where I download and have all my date added top music. And I'm just like, well, this is new, and I'm just going to talk about this. And then when I listen to this, what does it make me feel, and what does it make me think about? And the conversation would flow from there. It would remind me about a story. That story has 20 things attached to it. And then it reminds me of this ex-girlfriend story thing. And from there, I cater a song to that. And then that song is related. It's just a never-ending mix of tracks being mixed with my voice and audio effects and stuff. And those were all produced. I did 8 to 10 hours of those, but they took ages. That was like preparing a mix for a great festival that you want to impress people back in the day, if you ever used to prepare mixes. But
I still prepare mixes.
yeah, nice.
Like my job when COVID is not a thing.
Yeah, I'm a turntable DJ, and I kind of tried to stop doing that and just get like as good as a. Well, you could argue that if you don't put thought and effort into it, you could not be as good as you possibly could be. But like the epiphany or the highest element of a live artist or performer, like Beardy Man, the guy, he's not preparing shit. He's just getting out there, and then he's really good at not preparing. And I was trying to get myself to that level with turntables and mixing that way. But so I stopped kind of preparing sets, but now I'm producing my own music and putting the produced music and producing sets into that, probably the same line that you're doing. But anyway, found long-winded conversations really good, really heartwarming. I can re-listen to them because usually in the conversation I'm focused on it, or focused maybe on microphone positions and stuff. So you can get 2 hours, 2.5 hours of material, 3, 4, just talking to people, and way easier to edit. Just trim the top end and the back end. I made an intro. Yeah, that's why I moved into those long-winded conversations. But
Just because they're easier to edit, basically.
yeah, what I was doing, I was like, 1 minute would take me a long time when I was producing by myself next to the music, just listening to it. I was like, so I would say a few words, music would come in, and then music would turn down, and I'd be talking, and then I would say a few things and question myself and be like, all right, is this the best combination of words that I need to be saying for this song or for the next coolest thing that I can possibly say? And then when you're in a conversation, someone else is there and they really help move the move move space forward or keep a flow going. When you're just there by yourself listening to the best music and trying to get your feelings out about it and trying to express to people your ideas from the past and making it efficient and cool and stuff, might be worth checking out. You might enjoy it. I tried to make them cool lessons and all the craziest stories from traveling, and then all backed up with music, and that can't be released on Spotify and stuff. So those are all on Mixcloud. And that's one thing too about the long-winded conversations with no music copyright. You can release on everything.
Yeah, nice.
What are you releasing with for your podcast?
We use liberated syndication, or Libsyn for short.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like a distributor, like DistroKid or Symphonic Distribution or whatever, but for podcasts.
Yeah. Your manager's fucking awesome at intros, by the way.
Yeah, Nan. Yeah, you chatted with him to set this up, right?
Just emails, not in person, but off the top.
He's good. He enjoys doing them too, which is cool because I fucking hate doing them, and he's good at them too. So it's like
Unreal.
And also, I think he likes doing it because every time he does it, he gets to say like, "I'm a non-harsh from the Unts," you know. So it's like he gets to promote the Unts, which is his thing as well. So
Did he start it?
did he start it? No, kind of me and this other guy Robert started it, but he's like Anand is heavily involved with it for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he's heavily involved with most shit I do because he's my manager. But yeah, he yeah, I feel like you know, just like I think it was Robert initially that was like, "Hey, you should start a podcast," but I was like, I don't want to because I don't want to edit that much shit. Like, it's just I just can't. I don't really want to like go down that rabbit hole of editing stuff all the time. So he's like, "All right, I'll edit it for you," and then yeah, I just started doing them, and now he edits it, and then Nan does the intros. And
So your podcasts are edited just a little bit. I'm assuming like it doesn't take too much. Yeah.
I mean, I think Robert says he spends a couple hours on each episode.
Oh wow.
So
Like me on Ableton running these like WAV file over to sorry, if it's MP3, chuck it over to Audacity, make it a WAV, chuck it back into Ableton, clean up the front and back intro. It's real fast. I bet you'd be really fast at it.
yeah, probably, but I just don't have the time to do it. I'm like trying
Yeah.
to do too much other shit, like make an album and
Yeah. Cool. Let's get into, have you heard any other podcasts that you don't admire or things in podcasts that are just don't do? If you had that advice for people? You don't have to, try to, it's not negative whatever you say. You're still,
yeah.
if there are,
No, I'm just trying to think if there's something that really bothers me in podcasts, but not really. I mean, I actually don't even mind the ads in podcasts usually because they're usually relevant to my interests. It's like, do you need new pillows and underpants? And are you also a recruit? Dude, podcasts are like, are you a recruiter who employs people but don't have a mattress or underpants? That's basically how it works. They're like ZipRecruiter, you know, hire employees with ZipRecruiter, and then it's like Me Undies, where you can get your underpants, and then it's like, do you want a mattress from, you know, Sleep Easy or some crap like that? It's just funny that they think I'm like somebody who employs people but don't have underpants.
who designed that ad? What a genius. Maybe?
Well, it's 3 different ads, but they usually all happen.
Oh, gotcha.
consecutively.
It must be popular, dude. They work on an algorithm. kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I
Or
think Spotify is doing podcasts now, and it's kind of interesting the way they do ads rather than like record the ads into the podcast and edit it into the podcast WAV file itself. They just play as like separate uploads, like in the middle of the podcast. It's kind of interesting. I was just watching like the Joe Rogan podcast on Spotify the other day, and that happened a few times.
yeah, I remember getting bombarded with ads with Joe Rogan before on YouTube, and before I had YouTube ad block, which is amazing. Get it? Don't waste your time with ads on YouTube if you don't want them.
The problem with that though is like ads are also how content creators get paid, right? So it's also how YouTube gets paid. But yeah, so to some degree, it's like the ads need to happen to like pay people. There's actually a browser that my girlfriend works on that tries to solve this problem called Brave, and they have this thing called the basic attention token, and it's a whole thing. You'll have to read up about it.
Yeah. Do you think it could ever work on a pure donation basis?
That's kind of what Brave does. I mean, you can tip people for tweets and shit like that.
Okay. Like Twitter tweets?
Yeah, yeah. Like it'll have a little tip button where you can send them some Brave attention tokens
Neat.
for their content, I guess.
Is that a crypto?
Yeah, it's crypto.
Yeah. Neato. Are you in on any of the Bitcoin and Ethereum?
I mean, I have some, but I think the whole thing is a fucking bubble, and I think it's going to crash hard. And
Nice.
yeah, I mean, like it's obviously going up right now, and there's a bunch of people making money, but I think crypto is like the start of an idea that is probably going to be useful and cool at some point. But I don't think Bitcoin's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Heard it's a environmental disaster as well.
Everything is an environmental disaster. Humans,
You're an environmental disaster. Shit.
pretty much. Yeah, I think just humans in general are pretty bad for the environment.
Yeah, you can't live and not be.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin, like the damage Bitcoin does to the environment is like fucking probably not nowhere near as comparable as the amount of damage like factory farming for animals does to the environment, or like, airplanes do to the environment, or the military shooting all their guns and making all their ammunition do the like. There's so many other things that are way worse, I think.
Yeah, and the bullets might kill people, and that would reduce the amount of people. Oh God, twisted man.
Also, I think like sending emails is like also bad because I mean Google, they have these huge server farms and shit like that to run like all their servers for Gmail and whatnot. So everything's bad.
Oh man, I wonder if it's worse than paper. I think that's what we were moving away from. And it's instant.
Paper's probably worse, but hard to say.
We need those trees for houses. I worked at a lumber mill down the road, and we used to send all of our lumber over to Australia. So you might have received it. You might have lived in a house built by lumber we sent over. It's hilarious.
Possible, yeah.
Hey, so under physical or like microphone tips for recording, just off the top of your head?
My biggest tip is to get a good preamp.
Gotcha. Can you explain to people what a preamp is?
So it's something that you send your microphone into, and it boosts the gain and clean. Like it boosts the gain cleanly of your microphone before you send it into your sound card. So it's like a piece of hardware that sits between your microphone and your sound card. And yeah, there's a few different ones. Currently, I'm running into like this nice one down here, the Universal Audio one. But I had this for a while, this like little dynamite stick, which just actually sticks directly into the back of the microphone. And that's that. I don't think that worked very well, to be honest. So I don't recommend it, honestly.
It's people. Would you say there's preamps inside of sound cards these days?
Yeah, there is. I mean, but they're not that good. It's like sometimes they're okay. I mean, the ones on the Metric Halos are alright, and the ones on what else? The ones on the Universal Audio cards are like decent, but I mean, obviously, if you get an outboard one that has like tubes and shit like that, it's gonna sound a lot better.
Yeah, so you're on a high class, high quality audio level because I bet a lot of people wouldn't be able to know the difference. And a big part of it is how you talk into your mic. It's gonna, yeah, no, keep your. What I like to tell people is like, no ambient noises. Keep the microphone juiced, but don't clip it. How can you know you're not clipping it? Read that on your sound card.
Yeah.
Don't talk directly into it. Don't blow into it unless that's your game.
Unless you're recording on my podcast about blowing.
I wonder if you can have the gain so far down and blow into it and just hear it without it like clipping. Would that be a thing?
Yeah, I mean, if you use like a dynamic microphone or something like that, that doesn't have super high, like a really sensitive diaphragm in it or anything.
Put some grass in between you and the microphone and pick up that sound. Grass blowing. Record that in the studio.
Well, instead of a pop filter, just make a grass filter.
Hippies. Vegetarians.
Shit, yep. Hey man, so I probably got to bail.
Awesome.
But yeah, I appreciate you having me. And yeah, just send through a link when the episode is ready to go.
Sure, man. And is there anything on my end I can do for you?
Yeah, just send a link when it's good to go, and we'll just check it out.
Cool.